Hello everyone, let me solve this problem from LeetCode. LeetCode 2620 counter. So let me read the question first. Given an integer n, return a counter function. This counter function initially returns n and then returns one more than the previous value. Therefore, we have to keep in mind that whenever we call the counter function first time, it returns exactly n without even changing anything to it. But after then, whenever we call the counter function, it always returns that previous value plus 1 each time. Alright, so it returns one more than the previous value every subsequent time it is called. So let's say the initial value is n, so for the first time we call the counter function, it returns n. In second time, n plus 1, third time, n plus 2, fourth time, n plus 3, like this, and the list goes on. So the example is like this: input n equal to 10. Alright, so if we call the counter function now, for the first time it should return 10 without even changing anything to it. But for the next time, it should add one value with the previous value and return that. So it's something like this. You see, whenever we are calling the counter function, first time it returns 10 itself, second time 10 plus 1, 11. Then if we again call the function 11 plus 1, 12. So it increments the value each time we call the counter function, but for the first time it returns the value itself without changing anything to it. So this is the basic idea, and they also have provided us with some explanations, but I don't think that is necessary because I have already clarified what they want us to do. Example 2 is also the same, but maybe I can tell how it works, because here the initial value of n would be negative value as the value of n is minus 2. So for the first time it should return the value itself, which is minus 2. Then if we call it again minus 2 plus 1, that means minus 1. If we call again minus 1 plus 1, 0. If we call again 0 plus 1, 1. If we call again 1 plus 1, 2. So this actually works like this. But this is LeetCode. I also have to think about the time complexity and the space complexity, and the best thing I can do is to try something that would make my solution linear, so that the time complexity becomes order of 1, and the space complexity also becomes big O of 1, I mean order of 1. Alright, so how can I solve this? In JavaScript, we can follow up the closure function. This is not something like that. This would be a straightforward thing, because closure is not a very small topic in JavaScript. But if I want to explain it very briefly, then it would be like this. We are going to create a closure. Just leave that part, closure. Let me clarify that in a more simpler way. So what we are going to do, I can simply implement some kind of global variable that would hold the initial value of n, and then I can call that value whenever I need to modify it inside my this return function. Alright, so let me simply try to solve it. Create counter is my initial counter function. Alright, so let's say I can declare another temporary variable and I can assign the initial value of n into it, so that the initial value of n doesn't get changed. Alright, so let's say I can simply declare a variable, let's say count. So count will have the initial value of n, so let count equal to n, like this. And in the return function I have to increment the value of n. So I can simply use count equal to count plus 1. Then I can simply return the count itself. But there is a simple problem. let me show you what that can be. So let's say the initial value of n is 10. So here goes 10, that is fine. In line number 6, I am telling it that the value of count would also be 10. That is completely fine. And then what I am doing, I am adding 1 to it. So 10 becomes 11 and I am returning 11 to it. So what becomes? If the user gives 10 as the initial value of n, for the first time I am returning 11 instead of returning 10. So it doesn't work like that. So what I can do, I can simply return like this. So how it actually works. Let's say, let me give the same example again, but with this modified code so that it might help you to understand it a little bit more. Initially, the value of n was 10, that is fine. So count becomes 10, that is also fine. But then I am adding 1 with it. So 10 becomes 11. 10 equal to 10, I mean count equal to 10 plus 1, it becomes 11. But what I am returning? I am returning 11 minus 1, 10. So whenever the user is giving me 10 as the initial value of n, for the first call I am returning 10 itself. So my first problem is solved. And then what it becomes, as we are implementing the closure function here, so the initial value was 10, that is fine, but it becomes 11, and then we are returning 11, then 12, then 13, and the list goes on. I know it might seem pretty much complicated because closure is not something that I can teach you within a few seconds or so, but there is a very good article in the LeetCode itself in the solution section. Actually, I'm also following that solution. So I will make sure to link that solution part in the description box so that you can get a very clear view of how they implemented closure in this section. All right, so that's it. And let me simply test it first, run. I know it would work because I have also tested it out. All right, let me simply submit it. Yeah, it's perfect.